Are you?
No, I'm running out of battery. Well, my computer is dead. Trying to get rid of it. Yeah.
Okay. and I charge
Oh,
years,
yeah.
forget about it.
Right, I'm gonna have.
I'm not, that might be the stuff for the mic.
Oh,
The live on
okay.
YouTube.
I'm unplugging the mic.
All right.
Oh, I guess you're.
Yeah.
He's made himself.
Unless the committee's missed it. What is it? Paper copy.
Of the budget?
Everything.
I am charged app computer. That's like, it loses charge.
It loses charge when you.
This probably.
That's none of that. None of these.
Actually. Third school committee person.
Sandra, yeah.
Yeah.
Sandra's coming?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I turned it on, but I don't, none of this.
That's my biggest issue. Sandra, grab me budget and an agenda in the box. I got you one.
Oh, could you grab me an agenda too?
Oh, you have one right here.
Oh, I do. Never
Sandra,
mind, never mind. Sorry, sorry.
You got one.
Let's just assume, like, that- I know I've said this before, but even the transportation. For the next year, freshman, sophomore. You have to run through just.
Thank you. Your
saying.
your collar's kind of turned up there.
I'm getting ready for it.
You look like you've already bum rushed yourself.
We get to put in the middle for something.
It's an executive.
It's been a while, this thing wants to turn
Oh,
on.
no, I'm taking
Inside
the.
the middle. We're the
Get
biggest
it go
spender.
like this.
We're the biggest.
Hey, we got everybody. We got our meal service.
Planning board. Where are we? Animal control, don't tell me we're below.
What is this?
Yeah, Richard, yep.
Public works?
Do I-
Nice.
Nothing. Don't hear
Nothing,
anything.
you don't do anything.
It just does it for
The
you.
only thing that you touch
That one.
this one.
Hold that in. Wait a second and then speak into it.
And
you're
what-
stealing my thunder.
What is this?
This is for the
Do not touch.
online. So this is the online setup with the camera.
Oh,
That's right.
And then these are just for the audience
Yeah.
here with these makeshift everything.
Was there
So right now this is good.
Wi-Fi?
Yeah, PSD Wi-Fi.
What is it?
Coming around. It's just the PSD Wi-Fi. It's open.
Yeah.
You gotta just pick it.
Don't go there.
No password. It's beginning. Yeah.
My
I don't
own
know if you can
computers.
pick it from beginning.
oh.
Everybody else have Wi-Fi?
Wow.
I think, yeah, no, I just goes right in. I just got it from the town website. So must be good.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, right? How do I wind up over here?
Where they throw the darts.
This is Tom. He's being arbitrary. Throwing people around.
Already set up when I got here, Linda.
Oh.
I used way down there where Andrew is.
Well,
Set them right there.
Now you
Now
can
you
yawn.
I know.
Get in, you're gold.
Tom's gonna be like.
Oh, no.
All right, it's coming up here.
So we are live.
Here we go.
Whenever I'm connected to the Wi-Fi.
Give it to-
What? Security? I thought it was open. Public.
Public one, that's one.
Come on.
Surveys.
I was trying to get into this side of it.
What's Wordle doing up there? I'm just kidding.
I love Wordle.
We do too. So Mark is angry today. He's just a grump.
Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah. 1 year we did that.
No, what I'm looking at is like
Good.
for the entire budget.
Can't see down there. Good.
Should be all
We're
closed.
gonna start. You guys are way down there, but we're gonna start.
That's the cone of silence.
Jim, you can quote me on that. I said echo down.
That's it. That's
Oh. So the clerk's. It's to be seen. So chop. Not if you want
obviously this.
to make a good impression.
Oh, I see what my thing. Oh, there it is.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our June 15th council meeting. Tonight's our budget hearing. Before we begin, though, I would like to go through the evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency, please exit to the rear of the theater. There's 3 sets of doors. Go out the doors, across the parking lot, and await further instruction at that time. And let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. For everyone to the Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, before we begin, I just want to go through a couple of ground rules. We are streaming, so those of you who are might be participating and wanting to speak, if you're on Zoom, there's an icon to indicate you have a question. If you're on your phone, it's *9. It's *6 to mute and unmute your phone. *9 will indicate you have a question. Anybody who does wish to speak tonight, please state your name and address for the town clerk. And with that, we will begin with our roll call. This is, yeah, whenever someone turns in.
Ms. Jukusa?
Present.
Ms. Abbott? Present. Mr. Hamilton?
Present.
Mr. Katzman?
Present.
Mr. Kelly?
Present.
Dr. Ryan?
Present.
Mr. Aguirre?
Present. Okay, I would also like to welcome the members of the school committee that are here with us this evening, as well as our superintendent, Dr. Kenworthy. Okay, Mr. Diorio from the finance side of things. And with that, we're gonna turn this over to the town administrator, Mr. Rayner.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council, school committee, and people participating from home, ladies and gentlemen here in the audience. The proposed town budget was presented to the council at meetings on April 25th, 26th, and 27th. Proposed changes were made, and the budget was provisionally approved on April 27th. We are here tonight to review the town council's provisional budget. Following tonight, the final budget is scheduled to be adopted at the June 27th council meeting. So let's start on page 7 of the budget. Here you will find the letter that I wrote to the council, which I sent to the council at the end of March. The provisional budget details $69,967,453 in expenditures from the general fund, which is 1.29% over the budget from the previous year. The current annual inflation rate in the United States is 8.6% for the 12 months ended May 2022. This proposal will entail a residential property tax rate of $15.65.7 per $1,000 in assessed value, compared to the current rate of $15.31. This is a 34.7 cent or 2.265% increase in the residential property tax rate. So if we scroll to page 9, at the top of page 9, you can see the general property levy of $59,664,159. The general property levy is determined by adding the residential, commercial, and tangible property levies. This is a 3.32% increase over last year and is $393,000 below the cap, which is the limit to which this levy can be raised year over year. The levy on motor vehicle taxes on motor vehicles is not factored in when you determine the levy cap. Total revenues and expenditures are highlighted at the bottom of the respective sections on this page. For those interested, a detailed breakout of these levies can be found on pages 15 and 16. But for now, we'll scroll to page 10. Page 10, we can turn our attention to projected revenues. Starting at the top of the page, we can see projected revenues from specific sources. We project revenue from property taxes, state aid, general government operations, public safety operations, the Prudence Island Transfer Station, recreation fees, rental, and other income, which includes revenue from Newport Polo, various leases, and the Glen Manor House. So, Mr. President, the total projected revenue found at the bottom of page 10 is $69,967,453. Let's now turn to page 26. Here we see the beginning of our projected anticipated expenditures. The first section on page 26 breaks out total expenditures for general government. For our purposes, general government is essentially made up of all the functions and operations located in Town Hall. This was provisionally approved at $6,268,218. Next is public safety, which includes police, animal control, harbor master, fire, and emergency management operations. This has been provisionally approved at $14,757,080. Public Works, which includes road improvements, snow removal, and the Prudence Island Transfer Station, was provisionally approved at $4,287,064. This is followed on page 27 by Recreation and Parks, which was provisionally approved at $308,219. Civic support is next after recreation. Total civic support was provisionally approved at $938,963. For those interested, the list of organizations supported can be found on page 67. It should be noted that state library aid is a pass-through item, and it goes directly from the town to the Portsmouth Free Library. Next, you can see the total projected bond debt service for the next fiscal year, which is provisionally approved at $1,943,174. For those interested, you can find the breakout of town and school debt beginning on page 71. At the middle of this page, you can see the section labeled Other. This section includes next year's anticipated capital projects and expenditures, which are broken out on page 70. This section also includes funds to be distributed to the Other Post-Employment Benefits account, the OPEB account, the Open Space Reserve Fund, a Capital Reserve Fund, and a contingency account. Total for other items was provisionally approved at $1,622,388. So, Mr. President, the sum of these subsections equals the total municipal side of the budget, which was provisionally approved at $30,243,454. Let's turn now to page 68. So here begins the breakout of the school budget. The school budget is a sum of various parts which consists of direct town appropriations and several other sources of revenue. Beginning on this page, you can see direct funding from the town general fund, which includes a local appropriation of $36,089,376. Next, we project federal impact aid of $180,000. This is followed by projected state aid of $3,634,623. Restricted revenue is projected to be $1,883,033. Turning to the next page, we'll find miscellaneous revenue, which is projected to be $2,310,500, which is a sum of anticipated receipts, profit shares, tuition payments, and Medicaid reimbursement. The total school unrestricted and restricted budget is a sum of these sections and was provisionally approved at $44,097,532. So, Mr. President, if we return to page 27, we see that the total school town budget sums to $69,967,453, which the council has provisionally approved and is equal to projected revenues. The last budget sections to be discussed are the enterprise funds, which begin on page 81. First enterprise fund is the Glen Farm Equestrian Center. In accordance with the concessionaire's contract with the town, the concessionaire shall pay the town a base fee of $18,846 plus 5% of their annual gross receipts. An amount not to exceed the first $5,000 of revenue share generated during each quarter shall be immediately credited back to the concessionaire to be invested in repairs, renovation, and long-term maintenance. This is monitored through a regular review of the center's financial statements by the Director of Economic Development. We expect remittance of a base fee of $18,846, which will remain in the enterprise fund for grounds maintenance and repairs. On the next page, 82, you'll see the budget for the Headley Street Transfer Station. This budget operates on a calendar year from January 1st to December 31st and has been previously approved on November 22nd, 2021. On the next page, you'll see the Glen Manor House budget. The Glen Manor House Authority is projecting $680,000 in revenue and $272,056 in total expenses, resulting in a net surplus of $407,944. 25% of that, or $101,986, is projected to be distributed to their capital fund, and 75%, or $305,958, is projected to be turned over to the town general fund. Next on page 84, at the top, you'll see the Portsmouth Septic Loan Program, and you'll see that it's zeroed out in accordance with the council's direction and approval that enterprise fund be closed. Below that, you'll see the enterprise fund for the Arthur Daniel Howell House. In accordance with the concessionaire's agreement, the vendors are obligated to remit $30,000 base fee to the town. Also, as part of the agreement, the base fee will be credited back to the vendor for continued renovations to the building. There is no surplus or deficit projected for FY23. So, Mr. President, that ends the discussion on the town enterprise funds, and that concludes my briefing.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Rayner. At this point, you can open it up. Any questions, comments? I'd like to acknowledge that through this process, Mr. Rayner was referring to provisional approvals. Those provisional approvals were accomplished during our initial budget reviews back on April 25th, 26th, and 27th, when we went through each of the line items, item by item, department by department, and provisionally approved the budget. So tonight is a summary of a recap of the budget process. I know some of you were involved during the budget process. I anticipate you have some questions. Feel free to ask them at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Kristen Court.
Microphone, there you go.
Okay. Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Kristen Court, Portsmouth. I'd like to begin by saying that we believe that this budget is, talking about the document itself, noticeably more readable. There's been a number of changes, and I'll mention those that we think are particularly useful to us. But the changes have been appreciated, and I think we lose track of us and maybe yourselves from time to time that this document is supposed to be able to be easily read by our citizens. Of the three things that we think worthy of note is a clear notation of changes that's been instituted throughout this document. And we can see on any following document what has been changed. On the page, there's a summary of changes in the preamble. Inclusion of a summary of town special funds, which is something I've been trying to get back in the budget for a while. So I see it's there, and I appreciate that, although I have a question later on about that. The third item is a clear listing of bonds by separate town and school sections, so that people can see how much the bond debt is for each of the parts of the town government, which is how we display it, by the way, in our tax documents as well, when we send them out to our citizens, actually taxpayers. I'll call these by page numbers, but I don't think there's been a change in the page numbers, but my page numbers of the old document. You may find it off. Page 7, budget message. Note that the increase is 2.267 in the taxes.
Recording in progress.
The mill rate's gone up at 0.347. That's 60,000. There's a better year than some past years. 2.6 is the levy on residential property taxes. That's a positive thing, but it's higher than it needs to be. I would remind the council of the abundantly obvious situation financially in the nation, probably in the state, probably going into a recession, although it's not yet clear. But Rhode Island has traditionally been first in the recessions and last out. I leave you to make a judgment as to what. But in any case, it may very well be that our citizens who have to pay these taxes are going to be in distress in the immediate future. I'd like the council to bear that in mind. I'd like to go to page 10, which is the state aid revenue. The state estimates revenue to the town talk about the total, I guess. 600, sorry. Well, there's a 684,000 and change decline, or 11.7, 11.8% over the current year estimates. And I know that there's issues relative to the school department that we've suffered through for years, and I'll comment on those separately. I'd like to know why we're seeing a reduction in revenue from the state. Does this have to do with the funding from the federal government?
Not really. I don't know if we can answer why we're getting less money from the state, but
Well, I know that's an esoteric, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Was there a line item? Because we don't see all your line items. There's a summary line that I would assume there are more detailed lines that come from the state.
I can forward to you, but it comes right out of the governor's budget. And then it's distributed to all the cities and towns. And that's where we get the number from. And then, of course, we have to hold our breath until about this time of the year to see if that holds true.
Okay, I just thought maybe there was somebody that knew. But I think over time, it's fairly obvious that number is likely to reduce to zero as time goes forward, unless the voting business changes in the Senate. But in any case, we can short it out of East Bay. By the way, I heard a state representative comment, why would I want to fund people in East Bay? We've heard that before. I just thought I'd pass that. He was on the radio. I want to speak to the combined lines on page 19, which is the clerk's office, real estate transfers. Page 20, finance department, labeled as miscellaneous. Page 21, which is the building inspections. And those three lines from those three budgets look like they're associated with construction and real estate transactions and all the things associated with the house, selling the houses. And I know that taken together, they're $410,000 more for this fiscal year we're looking at now over this year. And as I said earlier, I think we can see that number one, the Federal Reserve raised the basic rates by 0.75% today, which is, I haven't done that in a long time. They promised that it's going to be at least a half a point in the future, the next meeting. That is going to, of course, kill a lot of the real estate business, because that real estate mortgages are key to those events, key to those numbers. And if we go into a recession, that's likely to put a clamp on construction in this town, building loans and mortgages. And I know we had a good year this year, spending, but I would like to remind everybody something that I remember, maybe not everybody does, but when the town of Portsmouth goes into a recession, construction stops dead. We don't get any more new houses built for a while. And if we're depending on increased revenue, in this case, $410,000 in these three items, these three different departments, real estate transfers, building permits, and so on and so forth. My concern is that we may have anticipated revenue that's not only not going to be there, there's not going to be this increase. We're not going to get what we thought we were going to have this year. So I'd like to have somebody take a look at that idea. That appears to be in the budget what we're seeing. I don't remember any increase in fees that would support this. So this increased volume has to come from, increased revenue has to come from increased volume in these three categories. So I could be wrong about that, but I don't see it any other way. And we didn't have any fee increases passed by the council. So I'd like to hear an explanation of how we calculate this. Did we anticipate current financial plans?
Yeah, this was looked at in great detail. The reality is, while what you're saying is intuitive, that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing record building inspections, record building permits, mostly on the side of people doing home renovations, and that has not slowed down. So the original estimate for projections, which actually, as we were building the budget in January and February, was actually throttled down quite a bit to this number. So we're fairly confident that this will be a good number. And then, of course, we do have controls throughout the year. As we see that we're not meeting this projection, then we will adjust the budget as necessary to ensure that we don't go over budget.
Well, I understand that all of this is a projection based on the best information we have. Not a criticism, that's just the way it is. But it's something of a student of what happens to us in a recession here in this town. And this may not be a recession, it may not actually happen. But we could be running $600,000-800,000 deficit before we know what happens. So we need to keep an eye on that, I would recommend. So I appreciate the town administrator's answer. I expected that. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. You as well as I recognize a certain amount of revenue short gets to be a real serious problem. I think we're in that run. So moving on, I just have a question on page 36, which is the human resources benefit line. Town hall employees have been lumped together for the enforcement defined benefit pension plan. But there are entries in each one of the municipal departments for that same line item. Maybe I've asked this before, I may have. I guess I've forgotten the answer. Is there a reason why we do this?
Yes. So town hall employees who are typically almost exclusively, we're talking about the PMEA union, all work in town hall. So they're captured in the HR budget. All the other employees that are in the defined benefit are captured in the departments that they work in.
Makes it a little hard to figure out my spreadsheets. That's what I asked. All right, thank you. Page 38, the town solicitor's salary went up a lot. Went up to $159,000 from $131,000. That's a 21% increase. May I ask why it went up so much?
Yes. Overall, we're expecting a decrease in the legal fees, due mostly to the fact that the possible tax assessment case budgeted for last year has been resolved. So in accordance with this contract, the town solicitor earns a base monthly salary of $6,500 plus $100 per hour for additional services. For this budget, we combined additional services based on the average of invoices received with the base salary. The solicitor's salary has not increased beyond this contract. He still gets his base salary. We've simply combined the $78,000 base salary with his additional expenses at $100 an hour.
How did we pay for those in previous budgets?
In previous budgets, you saw the town solicitor, and then you saw an additional line for services that were his above and beyond expenses beyond his base salary.
I presume this means he's using that money to hire specialists or lawyers for court cases.
No, if you look at his contract, there are base services which he provides, which is covered in the base contract. Anything outside those base services are charged at $100 an hour. And then, of course, there are some times when he does have to hire additional legal expertise to handle a scope of law that he may not be conversant in.
I expect that from time to time, all solicitors, it's not this. Page 59, Public Works, the paving thing, I'm going to beat this drum one more time. I like the way this has been handled. I think it's a very positive thing. I said this to the members of the council before, and I repeat it. That's a popular thing. People actually can see what they're getting from their tax payments. I note that it's increased marginally, and we're keeping the margin. Hopefully, we're keeping up the roads. Doing this for a while, and it's been successful in many areas of the town. Page 68, school revenue. Talking about revenue from the state aid education, now it's called general aid funding formula. I don't know what that solves, problem it solves, but it has a new name. And in any case, for this year in our budget, it is flat funded. I have two questions. I have one question. Do we know, Mr. Piero or Mr. Kenworthy, what that number is in the budget that's now before this, the House Finance Committee? Whatever is there now, how low?
We have been looking at that. I'll let Mr. Piero probably answer it better than I can.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, so the number that we have in the budget was the governor's recommendation published at the time. Earlier in the week, it looks like the House Budget Committee, so not the full General Assembly, changed the number, increasing us by $137,621. However, the details around that are scarce. They've given us one number and not given us any details around what was funding formula versus group home versus, et cetera.
I didn't know if the group home went down again. I know we have to fight that back almost every year.
Yeah, that's determined by the number of beds that are open in group homes in the town. They open and close depending on need.
That may be, but I notice that every year it goes down. So by now there should be no maybe. Okay. I will note that we have in the PCC, Person Concerned Citizens, made remarks to members of the Assembly, delegation. And this is the first year for a long time, 10 years, right before that, where the aid education hasn't been reduced by about $200,000. So I've made a lot of complaints about that. So I guess I'm obligated to say I noted that it wasn't done this year. I know we talked, all of us did, to the delegation when they came before you for your legislative agendas, and they promised to do something about it. And I'm hoping that came to fruition, and they can. I hope more. They can defend this number. It's good news that goes up. What the real good news is, flat. Up is better, but flat is where we were at. Tragic as it might be. The reason I say that, you all know this, but for anybody who's watching on television, all this money that is reduced in the aid education at Portsmouth is it's covered by the taxpayers, not 100%, but 95% of it. Taxes go up to cover that. So when the assembly decides they're not going to send the money to us, our taxpayers pay the freight. All the money we send up there, I don't think that's the appropriate way to do business. Page 85, special revenue funds. First of all, I'm pleased to see it in the budget again, but I also noted that there's no actions for the FY 22-23 budget. Is there any additions or subtractions to any of those funds for the new budget?
What's presented here are the audited numbers.
I got that.
Right, exactly. So this is what the finance director had to go by. She was uncomfortable putting in anything that hadn't been audited, so that's why this is listed this way.
We routinely add and subtract money from these funds.
There are some that are fairly active, yes. So we can make a note of this, and I can talk to our finance department, and we can go ahead and try to give you the most up-to-date number that we have prior to the final budget preparation.
You don't budget anything in the budget, I presume.
No.
Thank you. I'm done. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Morris, for your comments. Is there anything on, who's monitoring online? Nothing online?
Great, 110 Therapy, Portsmouth. The contribution made to the pension fund in this budget is $1.3 million less than it was last year. That seems like a really big reduction. Two components of that reduction are the pension discount rate, which was returned to the council approved level, and the fact that we had a very good year in the market last year. But there's a troubling component to that reduction as well. Long-term wage increase assumption used in the pension payment calculation was changed from 3.5% to 2%. This is almost a 50% reduction in the projected long-term wage increases, just as we are entering a period of dramatic inflation. As Mr. Rayner pointed out in his opening remarks, inflation is running well over 8%. Making this change now makes no sense to me, but I realize it's a council decision. Unfortunately, this change was neither presented to the council for approval or passed on by what Mr. Rayner has called the revitalized pension committee for their advice. It was just implemented. What is concerning about this is the unrealistically low wage increase creates a much lower pension liability for the town, and therefore a much lower pension payment in the present budget. Making this change used the same flawed process as when the discount rate was reduced last year. It should be obvious to the council by now that the staff is making major decisions that affect the pension plan and our annual payment to it, and usurping the council's decision process. Just like the rate change last year, the staff again did not inform the council or the pension committee or the residents. Why? I believe the fool me once rule certainly should apply to the council here. The council itself did not ignore the number of unapproved changes to the pension plan assumptions year after year. I believe the council needs to get involved in obtaining an independent review plan administration from a knowledgeable, independent pension consultant. That consultant should report directly to the council. Funding such a review should be in this budget. In addition, it is my opinion, this year's pension payment needs to be recalculated using a more realistic wage increase for future wages. Any questions about that? I'd be happy to address them.
I don't have any questions, disagree, but I do have just a brief comment. I do acknowledge your comments. And we have recently been working with our pension committee to review some of this information. They are looking into some of the information, as you know, they're looking into the information you provided. And we're going to wait for some recommendations from the pension committee that will come to the council, and then the council can take action at that time. If we need to do an independent audit, that recommendation will come from the pension committee. And if that's necessary, we'll fund it. We'll fund it out of our budget, probably through contingency or some means. But if that's what's deemed necessary, that's the course we're going to take. In those discussions, you were a part of those discussions, so you know what the pension committee is doing. You know they're looking into these, the changes that have occurred. And at this time, we don't have answers, but it is ongoing. And we're going to need some more time to work with the pension committee, with GovInvest. It's also part of our finance package. So we'll get to the bottom of it. We may not get all the answers, but we'll get to the bottom of it. And you're a part of that process, so you know exactly what's going on.
I do, and I remember very distinctly, having looked at the agenda, that the last this is not for the budget, this is for something else. But it's not going exactly as you portray. I will wait to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Mr. President, with respect to the comment that we're doing things unauthorized, the 3% assumption was the incorrect assumption. There is no data that supports an actuary assuming that there'd be a 3% increase. They look at the contracts and then we keep them advised of the contract negotiations going forward. We have 3 5-year contracts coming forward for your review next week. All that data has been taken into account. It never should have been but 2. That was the council's direction, and we've not violated that on average.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Okay, so are there any more questions, comments from the public? Okay.
Here are no more comments, Mr. President. I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Mrs. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott? Aye. Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. I would like to thank everyone for their participation tonight. Members of the school committee, thank you. Mr. Rayner, staff, I'd like to thank everybody that was involved in preparation of the budget. It's not an easy process. And every year, I think we're getting a little better every year, and we continue to identify areas for improvement, and it's an ongoing process. But I think our budgets are getting better and better. So thank you, Mr. Rayner, all the department heads and the school side for putting this together. That's all, folks.